SIFIs, systemically important financial institutions, they go down, so does everything else, and they do not have a credible plan still if they have to be unwound. There is going to be bailouts, there's going to be bail-ins. So, we've talked in the past about the Federal Reserve's stress tests, which are garbage because they're really designed to build your confidence, not really show us how safe the banks are, since so much is hidden. And of course, all the banks typically pass. They may get reprimanded, they may get warnings, but that doesn't really matter. They're on the side, the Federal Reserve is on the side of the banks. That's their job, to keep the banking system whole. So what's going on with that? We've talked in the past about the lack of, or some parts of the stress test being opaque, so that banks don't know what it is. And so guess what? They are suing the Federal Reserve over that lack of transparency in stress testing. I think this is so interesting. Let's bite the hand that feeds you, but we want to make it even easier than you've already made it for us. The board's lack of transparency results in significant and unpredictable volatility in banks' capital requirements. So what they're really saying is that we live in an ample reserve requirement where if a bank gets into trouble, this is what happens. They don't need to keep reserves for your deposits, but that's not enough. They want to use even more leverage, which means debt upon debt upon debt. Works great on the way up, but you are taking a lot more risk. And when that risk goes the other way, who's the one that loses? So they want to have more access. They want to know exactly what all those tests are so that they can make sure that they finagle things to stay within the guidelines. Since the 2008 financial crisis, banks have faced a litany of new capital requirements and tests. Don't worry, all of those requirements, well, they've been doing deregulation for a while now, but that'll speed up in the new administration, as well as their need to carry, more reserves. At any rate, the bank executives such as J.P. Morgan Chase Chief Executive Jamie Dimon and Bank of America Chief Executive Brian Moynihan have said for years that the rules go too far and create new systemic risks by pushing financial activity outside of banks into less transparent markets. And what they're really referring to here is the private equity market, into those private markets that are a whole lot less regulated and take on a whole lot more leverage and a whole lot more debt. They want to be able to compete with that private equity. I'm telling you, you've got giants that are battling right now between private equity, which we talked about how they are actually the ones that are starting to dictate the rules in the banks, but banks want to compete with private equity because a lot of that business has shifted away from the banks to that private equity. Thank you for all of the money printing. U.S. Fed floats major changes to bank stress tests in light of legal rulings. Oh, the banks came at the Fed, so they're going to change it. And the Fed all but stated it intends to give the Wall Street banks the keys to the stress test, almost certainly making them largely predictable, highly gameable, and very favorable. Yeah, you think? They were already very gameable and very favorable. But here are all of the rules, so just stay within that. And you can juggle the accounting techniques. You can juggle anything you need to. It's okay to take on more risk. We're giving you the keys to the kingdom. All right. As a reminder, because this is the term that came up all the time during the financial crisis in 2007 and 2008. What is a SIFI? A SIFI is a systemically important financial institution. And what that means is that that bank that has that SIFI designation, if they fail, it's going to take the whole system down because they're so incestuously intertwined on a global basis. So let's look at that, because do you not remember that just recently we've had the banks fail the living will test? And by the way, that wasn't the first time that they failed. This is from 2016. 5 big U.S. banks, including J.P. Morgan Chase and Bank of America, have been warned by regulators to reform or face harsh sanctions after their plans to show how they could be unwound during the next financial crisis. They're now credible plans. Did they face any very harsh sanctions? No, they did not. And here we are, June 21st, 2024. That's not that long ago. The Fed and the FDIC find weaknesses in 8 SIFIs. SIFIs, systemically important financial institutions. They go down, so does everything else, and they do not have a credible plan still if they have to be unwound. There's going to be bailouts, there's going to be bail-ins, there'll be bail-ins first and then the bailouts. But there's really not going to be any other option. So what does that mean? It means a heck of a lot more of that. And how can you counter that? Well, let me tell you, you better have your position built, and you better be as independent and self-sufficient as you can possibly be with food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. You need to get it done. But to protect yourself and your financial health and assets, you got to have a sound money portfolio. There's not one little doubt in my mind about where we are headed into 2025. And you must understand that the reason why things aren't working the way they expect them to work is because we are at the end of this fiat money experiment. It doesn't work no matter how much more they print. There's no place left to go because officially we have 3 cents left out of the original dollar's worth of purchasing power. So what do you do when all of that purchasing power is gone? You attack principal. That's what negative rates are about. That's what's coming in. But the bail-ins, in other words, whatever you have deposited in a failing institution, you're not getting it back out. And what are the central banks doing? Well, this is through the 3rd quarter of 2024. And you can see that they are buying more gold than they ever have in history, especially since 2008, that crisis, because all they did with all that money printing was postpone the inevitable till they can get the next system in place. And what's that next system? It's a full surveillance economy. If they have their druthers, it'll be CBDCs. But if we can come together in global community and get even 3% of the population to convert this garbage into sound money gold and physical silver in your possession, maybe, just maybe, we can have a seat at the new table and have a much more fair monetary system. That's what I want for our children. That's what I want for all of us. We need to take our power back. But central banks know that gold is the ultimate flight to safety asset. And there are so many black swans that are swirling. And I don't even know why I use that term anymore, because I saw an awful lot of black swans, particularly in Australia and New Zealand. They're all over the place there. So, and a black swan event is supposed to be a shocker, so it's not a shocker for me anymore. But I do want you to realize that what we can see coming is not going to be an unexpected event. And central banks are getting into position to weather this great collapse and transition. Who knows more about what these guys are doing to the monetary system than those that are actually doing it? But let me tell you, things are changing. You need to change along with them and protect your wealth and your children's future, your future, our future.